What is going on, everybody? Here we go. Welcome, everyone. We are live, and we are going to be talking today about Jason theory. Now, this one goes back a little ways, but there's some more evidence now. And for people that are unaware of it, this is a combination of modern day, what we know about infants and what we know about adults, and how they look different and how the skulls completely change over one's lifetime. So it comes down to identification. For years, we thought that we were looking at different species of dinosaurs based on their skulls and the features that they had. But then we realized that this was just a young version of that dinosaur. So to give you an example, I am going to pull up a picture for everybody. Hold on. I don't know why I left my phone on. And we also are going to be touching on the debate that just happened, of course. But this was planned before the debate was, actually. So we're going to go through with the Jason theory. But just so you guys know that this is what happened. Nanotyrannosaurus was deemed a different species, not related to Tyrannosaurus rex. Then they discovered that it is the Tyrannosaurus rex. So if we can look into the past and see these things being misconstrued and misidentified, then what makes us think that they have human evolution figured out? Because clearly they do not. Matter of fact, the honest ones even admit that the more they look at the fossil record, the more they realize they were wrong and they are wrong. So this is them literally admitting that human evolution origin stories are not compatible with the known fossils. So without further ado, here's Jason.
Yeah, hi everybody. Look, I just want to say something about that the local flood guy. I assume that guy was that guy that Kent was arguing with, Matt. Was he an old earther?
Yeah, they're either old Earth or theistic evolution. I'm not sure.
Okay. Doesn't matter because if he's old Earth, he still believes that the dinosaurs were around 75 million years ago, right? Like even Smokey believes that because God, and then he believes that like God made a creation of Adam and Eve like 6,000 to 12,000 years ago, right? So right. I just wanted to say something about that. Well, okay, going on the lowest erosion rates, right? Just what we observe, and uplift rates. Well, some say every 12 million years, and then I heard someone on Standing for Truth's channel the other day say every 50 million years because he said you got to allow for rock erosion and all that sort of stuff. So he said it wouldn't be every 12 million, it'd be every 50 million. Well, I would say 75 million years would about cover it, right? Like for erosion. So they know that the uplift rate of today, so they would have to say that it was higher in the past or something, and the erosion rate was less, or the uplift rate was faster in the past. So because like it would all be gone, wouldn't it? I mean, after 75 million years, why are those layers still there with the dinosaurs from the 75 million years ago if the erosion rates tell us that it's just all going to be gone? So they say it's gone in some areas, in other areas it's not. That shows erosion, but we just see these flat layers, and it's just, it's all still there, basically. Most of it, the vast majority of it's still there. It should just all be gone everywhere, just completely wiped away. So that just invalidates his theory of older ages and stuff right there, straight out the gate. So we don't need to talk about that. So he's done. He's dealt with.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, all right. Then here we go. So you've got this thing with like Lucy, and you got a picture of her with lots of bones. With not very many bones, and right beside a picture of her, that is a picture of Lucy walking along with carrying a kid with human feet, you know, like a 3 or 4 or 5 foot or whatever, however tall they say she was. Like, she was only short apparently. And so from that picture that you can see, from this picture, you can see that there's hardly any bones of Lucy. It's right at the top. And there's hardly any bones of Lucy. And then right beside it, they got her walking along, walking upright. And, you know, just from that amount of bones that they found. And you can see the skull. I mean, look at the skull. And how did they know what she looked like? It's like, you know, it's if you see that, yeah, it's got no, it's like about it's the third picture down from in my theory. Actually, I should post the link.
It's okay. I will pull up the image for you. I know the one you're talking about, and it's in my book, so I'll take a photo and upload it for everyone.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, that's it's just funny that, I guess, I mean, they can just look at it later. It doesn't matter when they look at it anyway. But it's just funny that it's got that, it's such as, like, how can you tell what it looked like on the head for a start? You wouldn't be able to tell. And you just got such a small amount of bones there. You haven't got any of the, at the beginning, they didn't have any wrist bones or hand bones. They didn't have any foot bones, nothing. So they just drew her. So they just imagined that she was a, you know, a transitional, and Johansson's funding was going to run out just before he did this. So he just basically, he claimed that it's a transitional, and they just made this big story around it. And they drew Lucy standing up, walking along with human feet and with human type hands and stuff like that. Whereas later on they found, and I think Don Patton said this. He said she was so, it was what he said, she could, she had wrists that were made for knuckle walking, and she could scratch her own ankles while standing up, he reckons. He's just joking, you know what I mean?
Wow.
So he said just completely ape. She had an opposable big toe, like we've got an opposable thumb, just not as opposable as apes of today. But the thing is that she was just a different type of species. So, but she still had an opposable big toe. She didn't have human feet at all. And yet, if you go and see Lucy in the museums today, you'll see that they draw her with human feet. They still, I mean, portray her with human feet, and they know that that's completely wrong. So that'll just show you right out the gate, right there, that if they don't, why don't they change that to the thing? Because it would blow their narrative away. I mean, you know, it's quite clearly it's an ape. She was made for tree climbing. She was I think you even said in one of Matt's videos, I remember him saying that she even died falling out of a tree.
Yep, right here. Here's the image of how Lucy died. Right there. Right out of the tree.
That's how they say she died.
Yeah.
So, you know, there you go. It's not a human with human feet, you know. I don't think so.
Matter of fact, here's what they even say. I found the article right here. I will show it right here. She was made exceptional, powerful upper body, and she spent most of her time in the trees climbing.
Yeah. Well, you've got here, it says they found an arched metatarsal bone of Australopithecus afarensis, right? And if you have a look, I've got a picture of it. It says, I'm not a transitional. It's I've got a picture of that, and it shows a picture of the metatarsal bone, they say, from Australopithecus afarensis, and then I've got a picture of the of a human bone, foot bone, right beside it, and one's fossilized and one isn't, and one's a modern human bone and the other one's the Australopithecus. I mean, they're both not to scale. Like, I don't know how big the Australopithecus one or smaller was, the actual bone, when they pulled it out of the ground, but I'm just assuming it's just a modern human foot size, bone size. And anyway, and you compare the two, you can see that it's just a fossilized modern human foot bone, but they just attribute it to Australopithecus afarensis. So this stuff where they try to say that Australopithecus is some transitional where they say they haven't found human bones, fossilized bones in the strata. They're just outright lying. They've found more fossilized human bones in the strata than they've found with other stuff. I mean, I've got here a modern human foot bone, a foot, which I believe is like the entire foot fossilized, the bone structure, and then right beside it, I've got a picture of another modern human foot. So, like the actual structure of a modern human foot bone. And if you look at it, I mean, okay, when things get fossilized, they get deformed a little bit, because sometimes often they're under pressure, like a lot of pressure and stuff. But if you look at those bones and look right through that, and you can see, like, that is a modern human foot. So they say they attribute it to Homo habilis, but it's just a modern human foot within the modern human range. You know what I mean? So it's like they've found modern human feet fossilized in the ground, but they just attribute it to other stuff, and then evolutionists never hear about that. So they go along and say, well, they've never found anything. No. Well, actually, they've found way more of this sort of stuff in the layers than they've even found of chimps. So, which is really bad for them. I mean, they should have found. I think they found some chimp teeth and fragments and some other bones somewhere else, but they're just very tiny amount, So they almost find nothing of chimps in the fossil record. But they do find stuff from humans, but they either probably don't even report it, or they just, if they do report it, they classify it as something else.
Exactly. I'm going to show you some pictures. What do you think of this? Do you guys recall this when they found the first human footprint with Dinosaur, and then they destroyed it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's you can see that right there. You can see that's a footprint for sure. And also, look, I can just say about that Don Patton was given a speech at a university one day, and there was heaps of people in the auditorium. There was like a lot of people. The whole auditorium was full, and he was saying that I showed this scientist that's a modern human footprint and on the ground, and he said, oh yeah, but that's not a modern human footprint. It's a funny shape. So he got kids to run through the mud, and they ran through the mud and wet concrete, and like there was like a whole lot of different strips where these kids ran through. Different kids ran full blast, some red and slow, some whatever, just testing it out. Well, they ended up getting a footprint exactly identical to the weird shape that they found the other footprint, and they put them side by side and go, well, there you go. That was a human footprint left by a human, exactly that shape. So that weird shape is someone running fast in mud, and he showed that. And then he said, oh, well, how do you know it was laid down at the same time? And there was another one, and he said, how do you know it was laid down at the same time? The toes might have been carved on later. And sorry, no, so they might have been carved in. And so he did a cross section across the thing, and he showed that there's these little, when it's laid down at the same time, it'll have these little dark, like pressure lines, like, layers in the snow, like layers in the ice, white layer or whatever layer. It's got a dark layer and then a lighter layer. Well, you can see that when you don't know if you're going to find that when you cross section something, but he cross sectioned it. And you can see these dark little lines running through that prove that the footprint was laid down at exactly the same time as the dinosaur footprint was laid down, because those pressure lines and anyway, so the guy turned around and said, the professor then turned around and said, realizing that he was getting trapped, and he said, oh, well, the toes must have been carved on later. And so Don Patton said, oh, I'm glad you said that, because we cross-sectioned the toes as well, unbeknown to the professor. And the same thing, that the toes had the same little dark little pressure lines under them, and showed that the toes and the ball of the foot and everything were laid down at exactly the same time. So it proved that it was a human foot. And then, like the professor, like another professor at another auditorium, I can't remember. I think it was one where he was out there and the guy came out to have a look at him when he first found him, and he was walking around and he was really agitated and he was walking back and forwards, and he walked back up to him and he said, I know, he said aliens left these footprints, and he said, yeah, I know, aliens flew millions of miles to get here in a spaceship, landed, got out and ran around with bare feet in the mud with dinosaurs. You know what I mean? And just laughed his head off. Like, you know, these are the excuses they were coming up with back then. So they could clearly see that these were human footprints left with. And then he had a rock shelf, right, where these footprints ran into this rock shelf, and this rock shelf that was sitting on top of these footprints was like 50 tons of material. You can see, like, from the photos, that is not being artificially put there just so they could, you know, make some, you know, this thing is just genuine, this massive rock ledge. So they think, okay, if we lifted up this rock ledge and tore this rock ledge apart and took it away, underneath those footprints should continue, right beside the dinosaur prints and stuff. So they did. They ripped up the rock ledge, and sure enough, the footprints continued on, and you could see the exactly the same way, like someone's running in mud, you know. So, you know, and that just proved it. So people would say, well, that was carved, but what did they do? They went and carved them all and then put a 50 tons worth of rock ledge on top, and then, you know, like turn it into rock and solidify it on top, and then make it into a, like, you know, a proper layer of the earth and fool everybody. I don't think so. You know what I mean? So that just outright proved that the feet were that those prints were laid down at that time. And another one, what did he say? I can't remember. There was another funny story to that. Some other professor said something in an auditorium, and everybody just ended up laughing at him in the auditorium and walked out.
I remember you told me. This was when the guy said that dinosaurs must have had feet shaped like a human.
Oh, that's right. And he said that's one of the other ones. And he said, well, there must have been dinosaurs back then with human feet. And Don Patton snickered and turned around and said, well, okay, in that case, then there must have been there could have been humans back then with dinosaur feet. And everybody burst out laughing to the and half the people in that audience become creationists that day, because, see, they saw the evidence and they saw Don Patton live, and they saw, and I've got his qualifications actually in a doc, so I can post all that stuff eventually. But he's I mean, like, he's highly qualified. So to have Don Patton to say that he's not qualified and he doesn't know what he's talking about and he's just a hack is wrong. And I mean, he's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt by this cross-sectioning with fine water saws and you know, like, he took a big risk doing that, because he could have just destroyed a fossil and then not found those pressure lines underneath. And then if he didn't find the pressure lines, it didn't mean it wasn't laid down at that time. It just meant he wouldn't be able to prove it, right? So he took a big risk, and then he would have just destroyed a fossil, and then, you know, helped them prove that, you know, it was carved in. So he took a risk by cross-sectioning it, but it's lucky it came up that it showed it was laid down. I mean, what more do you need? You can see that it's human feet. You can see it. And he went to so much trouble to prove, because they'd say, oh, it's a weird, the other foot's a weird shape, and there's no way that, yes, it does happen if you're running through mud and you're scared and you're running, because that's exactly what they found when they got the kids to run through the wet concrete. They found one footprint that when you put them side by side, this girl left it, this 8-year-old or 10-year-old girl left it. I can't remember how old, or 11 or 12 or whatever she was, or 13, I don't know, but she left it, and you could see, and you put the images side by side, and they looked almost completely identical. You could see that it was definitely a person running through mud, definitely. And these are the things that evolutionists never get to see. They never get to see this stuff, because you'll give them the video and you'll say, oh, that's just Don Patton. You're the creator. Why would I waste my time, an hour of my life watching that when I could be, you know what I mean? So they'll never get to see those pictures, right? They act all sort of like a bit like that sometimes. Yeah, they'll never get to see those pictures. They'll never get to see them. When are they going to get to see them? It's like, if they went in there and they saw it, they might go, oh, you know, that's interesting, you know what I mean? And Don Patton, being qualified like he is, highly qualified like he is, and being a scientist, he worked on a lot of major projects that people don't know about. He worked on the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that sort of stuff. I mean, for people to turn around and say that he doesn't know what he's talking about, I mean, he found all sorts of evidence for young Earth creation, and every time he found it, they just come out and they just made up the most wildest hypotheses and really wild ones and put them out there, and people will just go, oh yeah, that's what must happen, because we know creation isn't true, you know. So it's when they say about feet and I mean, you got the thing like Stigi Morlock and things like that. You've got the what is it, the I can't pronounce it, Pachycephalosaurus, Stigi Morlock, and Draco Rex. You know, you got hang on, let me have a look. Let me see.
Also, while you're looking, if you come across a link, somebody asked if you could put those websites for Don Patton.
Yeah, I can. We can post them in the description later on. Hey, Matt. That'd be a better way, because then I could just go get them all together properly, and I don't have to focus on two different things at once while I'm talking.
Perfect.
And then people can just go there and just get all that stuff if they want to go and watch that stuff. So yeah, and we will put it all there. So everything. And then you can just go look at it at your leisure, and you don't have to keep clicking on things while you're watching this either. Yeah. So you've got the hang on, just let me get on to. I'm just opening up something on my computer, and I've got to turn the sound down. And
I have a lot of visuals I can show as well, so you can follow along like a story. You can tell everybody about what the pictures are.
Yeah, I just gotta. All right, so if I go, hang on, I gotta go set up my phone for. There it is. Come on. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's the dinosaur that has human feet that was leaving the tracks with humans along with dinosaurs. That was their idea of what happened. That better explains it than humans living with dinosaurs.
Yeah, no. I was just looking up the thing. No, I was going to start talking about that the Stigi Morlock and bones shapes in the head and that, and that how he sort of proved that the three different ones, the Pachycephalosaurus, I think that's it. Yeah, Pachycephalosaurus, and Stigi Morlock and Draco Rex are pretty much the same dinosaurs. Same dinosaur, but just at different growth stages of their lives. Do you have those pictures up there, Matt?
Not of the dinosaurs, actually.
Okay.
I had more of the human versions, and
okay. All right. No, that's all right, because I was
I
just
can
going to
find
go
it
through.
for you,
No, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. No, well, yeah, you can. Okay, I mean, if you see, I can just go down to the. Okay, I can go down to the. No problem. So if you go down to Gigantopithecus, I mean, look at the size of Gigantopithecus. What do they say, that he was like 9 feet tall, or taller? You know, so you've got an ape. They've found an ape that's 9 feet tall or taller. So if you imagine that, like, can you imagine if a 9 foot tall female ape had a baby, how big the baby would be? Right, it'd be a big baby, wouldn't it? So the skull would be quite large on a baby like that, right? It would be. There'd be no mistaking it. It'd be a big baby, and even in, say, as it grew, like, it's a young child, its skull would get even bigger, and it'd be quite large, starting to get quite large as a young infant. Whereas chimps of today, their skulls would be very small at a comparative size. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. So you've got you got the huge, massive sized 9, probably in some cases might even to get up to, you get freaks in humans, so you're going to get it in the apes as well, 12 foot tall apes. And you can imagine, say, if you did get a 12 foot tall ape and it had a baby, how massive that baby would be, right? It would be a big baby. It's not going to be a little thing. And when that thing's in as an infant, it's going to be a big baby. And then when it grows up to be, like a young child, it's going to be even bigger. So you've got this same progression with chimp skulls. You've got the chimp skulls. When a chimp is really young, like a fetus, its skull will look like it's got a very sort of human shape to it. It's and as they get older, like when they're born and as they go through into adolescence and stuff like that, they end up with like the skull, the muzzle protrudes out and starts to jut out as they grow, and as they develop into adulthood, the muzzle just like juts come right out, and their canines, sort of like grow right in, and their face just stretches out and changes shape, just in their lifetime. Like it's just amazing, that they can go from the skull, or the shape of a skull when they're a fetus, to the shape of an adult skull is just mind-blowing. You know what I mean? And you can imagine an infant, like if you see an infant, a gorilla infant skull, and an orangutan infant skull. I mean, if you had a 9 foot tall gorilla and it had an infant and its skull, I mean, that skull would be still pretty big. Like it wouldn't be like an infant of one today. I mean, if it's 9 foot tall, it's going to be a big infant skull. And if they found something like that with, say, the teeth broken out, but they just found the skull, they would say, "Oh, well, look at this. This is a transitional," because it's, and they sort of do look like if you say, imagine if there weren't any chimps alive today or apes alive on the earth today, and they found that in the fossil record like that, without that, like, say, evidence of it, being, here today, they found with that sort of look of an infant orangutan or a young 14-month-old orangutan or something like that, and then it would look sort of more human. And as the skull starts to, as the skull starts to grow, the facial features develop where the muzzle pushes out forwards from the front of the face, and it grows out further and further and looks more canine in appearance, the skull, rather than when it's younger. So, when they line up these skulls, like you get Erica and her she lines up these skulls in order of the way she thinks that they evolved into each other. Well, I mean, even evolutionists admit that way back then that there was a massive biological diversity way back then, compared to, like, the Earth is a virtual biological desert today compared to what it was in the past. Well, that means there was a lot more species back then. So when they hold up these skulls and they try to say, well, look at this, because this looks more human in these certain ways, that and then they, and they start lining them up beside each other, they're just lining up imagination. I mean, we know that the biodiversity was way bigger back then, so there was way more different types of species, and there would have been way more different types of species. And this is what they're looking at. They're just looking at, like, who knows what they're looking at? You know what I mean? Like they're just finding a skull. If you found like that a giant, say, a orangutan skull, a giant, massive, the fetus skull, and it was huge, and it was like, you thought, oh, this looks like, and you could honestly hold that up if it was fossilized, and say that it's a transitional, and you could totally see that, because it just looks more human. And even an adolescent, as it grows out, you could just line them up as it grows out and say, well, this is them evolving from an ape into a human, or from a human into an ape, whichever way you want to line them up. So it's just a matter of lining up the bones in an order, like Ken Hovind says, just lining up the bones in an order and imagining which way that they go. So there is no I mean, you got chimpanzee skulls from a young chimpanzee to an adult chimpanzee. They look completely different. They just look like, if you look at them front on and side on and all that sort of stuff, they just look like, you know, they don't look like the same creature. The one looks more human-like, and the other one looks, you know, just like a wild, savage animal. So, you know, all this stuff where they come out and they say that they haven't found human bones in the fossil record and that. And I've got a picture here of skulls all lined up in a line. And oh yeah, and I just wanted to say something quick about Australopithecus. That what do they call it? I can't remember its name. Let me see if I can find its name down here. I don't think so. Homo naledi, that's it. Homo naledi, that's what I was trying to think of. Well, I don't believe that. I've got another theory for Homo naledi. I mean, they've thrown out all sorts of wild theories with there's stuff that could suggest that Homo naledi might be a hoax too. Might not be, but even if it wasn't, it doesn't mean that, you know, like say, you know, people owned pet apes in those times to climb up tall trees to collect seeds or pods or fruit or something from the top of trees. And as their pets died, because they say they were buried over 100 and something year period, those apes, right? Well, I think they say something like that, 100 year, over 125 or 150 year period, they say. Well, why couldn't it have been that just some people moved into that area and lived in that area and learned how to train apes to climb up trees, and they were their pets, and when they died, they, instead of just, you know, throwing them out, they just went and buried them in the back of the cave and dropped them in the back of the cave as a sign of respect or something. I don't know. I mean, there's other explanations as to why that they were dropped in the back of the cave, because they're right when they say that no animal likes to go in the deep, dark, black part of a cave. So they're not going to just crawl in there and accidentally fall down the back of the cave. If they're an animal, they're only going to go in there for a purpose, and it appears as though that they were buried there, and they might very well have been. But there's another explanation for why they were buried there. And then the people, why is it only a 125-year period, and why have they only ever found this once in one place ever? So, you know, it could also be that it was just a people moved in there that learned to use some, I don't know, came in from Africa, or their ship got stranded, or who knows? I don't know. We don't know about people's abilities back then. We say we do, but we don't. So there could have been a lot of different reasons why there was these things living in the back of the, or buried in the back of the cave back there like that. I mean, you know, just because they didn't find human artifacts or whatever, it doesn't mean, I mean, I'm sure if you went outside there and you looked around outside the cave and outside in that region, you'd find human artifacts. I mean, that's what they do with other things. They find human artifacts like miles away in that region, still in that region, but miles away. And then they say, oh, this must have been or other like bones from certain apes and stuff, and that must have been from that bone over there. They'll find them like a mile away or a kilometer away or 7 miles away, and they'll put them together and say that they were with each other. Well, when it comes, they should do the same thing with that sort of thing as well. I mean, you know, there's these they find all, there's so much evidence in the fossil record to describe to prove that you know, I mean, to prove that there's been human fossils found in the fossil record. I mean, you got the actually phosphate beds that found, they said they found a human jaw in there, then they threw it away and blah, blah, blah. But they found other things in other places, many other places as well. I mean, if you watch, I can't remember the name of his, the guy now, but he's got a video series and he shows that there's one guy that says that they find fossilized things like parrots and things like that fossilized with dinosaurs all the time, and they just discard them and throw them aside because they don't fit their theory, sort of thing. It's one part of his that show that he had, and I remember seeing that. So I mean, if you see that sort of thing on a, you know, an evolutionist saying that off guard, not realizing he's being filmed or recorded, and he's saying that off guard, then what does that tell you? You know, it's that they're admitting that they find, you know, modern birds with dinosaurs all the time. They were for a very long time. They were just discarding them and chucking them aside. So, you know, it's just a theory of of absolute rubbish and garbage. There is no there's no substance to it whatsoever. I mean, you look at the size of animals from today to the size of animals in the past. They're just the same animals. These so-called prehistoric animals, but they were just bigger. And these, you know, you can see that it's just basically everything's running downhill. Like everything was bigger and stronger in the past, and it's just getting smaller and dumber and weaker as time goes on. And you can see it just so clearly if you look at the pictures in my theory. So anyway, I'll get that link now. And see if
Great. I will show people some pictures of things over time. What you're looking at now is a great depiction as well of ancient creatures. You see a wombat, and then you see the ancient ancestor, the same species of that wombat before the flood. You see a penguin, and then you see a monster penguin. Look at the turtles, completely different in size. We'll show some visuals from the actual bones, but this cartoon was a very good image that I was able to find that somebody made, and it really shows the contrast with a human being in the middle, the shadow. But when we really line them up and compare the two, that's when you get to see the difference. Look for yourself at an ancient crocodile versus a modern day one. Completely different, but yet still the same. We know that they're related, but we can see the difference based on just the size alone. We can look at a sloth. They go from being able to be carried today to being over 7,000 pounds in the past. Huge creature. Here's an owl. You wouldn't want to be anywhere near that owl. Matter of fact, that owl back then could probably kill you if it wanted to. Here we have a condor on the top, the largest bird that we have, a California condor on the top. Below is an ancient condor. Here are bears. It's a very large bear that the guy actually killed on the left, but nothing compared to the bear on the pre-flood world. Here's a beaver. Now that would give you a heart attack if that ran up on you in the pre-flood world, unless of course you as well were large. Here's a jaw size comparison between the two, obviously of the same species. And a picture I just showed a moment ago of shark. Obviously, pre-flood shark were much larger. Here's rhinoceros species. That's right. What we see as huge today was nothing compared to what we saw in the past. A rhinoceros in the past was larger than elephants of today.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. That's another thing about the unicorn. They've got one-horned creatures that were the size that were as big as mammoths. And back then, and it says, what does it say? It says God brought the Israelites out of Egypt with the strength of a unicorn. Okay, so it says with the strength. I think a one-horned creature with a massive razor-sharp horn on the front of its head, and being the size of a woolly mammoth, and an angry big creature like that would have a lot of strength, right? So yeah, I'm thinking that's probably, and they found that around that, Kazakhstan sort of region. They found them around there. So, they found them around that region, and they say it was 32,000 years ago. Of course, we don't say that, but yeah. So when they talk about unicorns, that's one thing that really annoys me. They put this. Oh, what about the unicorn? The Bible never says anything about a horse, a little fairy white horse with wings and fluttering around like a. No, this unicorn. When it speaks of a unicorn, it speaks of something huge and powerful and strong, and I'd say that pretty much covers it. And it came from around that region. So there you go. You have it. There's your unicorn. Very simple, and they were one-horned creatures as well. I've got another doc for that as well. Actually, matter of fact, I can find that right now, quickly.
Sure.
I'll find it. I got it right here. Here it is. Siberian unicorn.
Here's an ancient armadillo. As you can see, you can pretty much pick them up nowadays. Again, you wouldn't want to get near that thing in the past, probably. Here's a little wombat, I think, handheld today, as big as you in the past. Here's something terrifying. a gigantic penguin of the past. They found one that was 5'3". They thought that was huge. And then they came across an even larger one called a mega penguin that was 6'8". Just think about that walking next to you. That wouldn't be the best day ever.
It wouldn't be.
Just look at that thing. Just absolutely enormous. Of course, the rhino that I just showed, ancient rhinos. Here's a rabbit. Look at the rabbit. Even a rabbit was, what, 4 or 5 times larger than today? Then we have, here's a large sea turtle of today being released into the ocean, being helped out. And here they are in the past, bigger than your car. That's right. There's Kent, actually, when he's really young. Down there. Massive creatures. Massive. So when you see the skulls of these things when they're young, you think there's no way that that's the same, but it is. It's shocking how much morphological change can happen. But when we look at humans, we can clearly delineate the differences based on these features that we've come up with. This is just the skull, by the way. Humans have a parabolic jaw shape. We have canines that are flush with the other teeth. We have the nose bone. We have the raised forehead right behind the brow ridge, and we have a large brain casing. No primate has these features. So when they want to play stupid and say that there's no way to identify a human in the fossil record, they are lying, or they are dumber than anybody you've ever met. So I'm taking them as being on the first page, which is they live in La La Land, and they are just lying to the public, saying that there is no way to identify when we clearly have a way to differentiate. That's how we know that all these things right here that you're looking at are human, because the same characteristic traits are within all of them. And they like to play games and say, well, look at the chin can be receded. You know how that gets. And we see that's not a problem.
That's right. We've got that in Aboriginals in Australia. I've got Aboriginal people have got in Australia have got like what are they protruding brows and very weak chins, and that's just a characteristic of them. And I used to live in the Northern Territory with Aboriginals, and I can tell you that. So I've been into the Aboriginal communities up there, so and been friends with Aboriginals, and so I've seen them right up close, so I know I can attest to the fact that, and they're I used to have a lot of Aboriginal friends. I used to there's one Aboriginal guy who used to go out near where there were crocodiles. At night time, you'd have a big campfire going because you could hear crocodiles barking down on the river, and because they bark like a big old dog. And like if you hear like a sound like that, and you think, oh, well, that's not really that much to worry about. It's just a little one, right? But if you hear, the bigger they get and the older they get, you hear, woo, 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 like that. And because I said to someone once, I said, because I was camping there by myself first, and I said to someone, well, there's that big old dog barking all night over there. And they said, that's not a dog. And I said, what is it? They said, that's a crocodile. So you said it sounds like a big old dog the way I described it. They said that's what a big crocodile sounds like. The bigger they are, the deeper the bark. It sounds like, and the big old ones that sound like big old dogs are huge. So yeah, there was a big crocodile down there, and I thought there was a dog barking all night. So yeah, there's anyway. I get off the subject, but there's so much like evidence in of things being bigger in the past, and like this with that unicorn thing, that Siberian, like they've got that Siberian unicorn thing that I showed you. I mean, they've literally got unicorns from the past like that, but they like to push the narrative to make the Bible look stupid, that the Bible believes in white horses with wings and stuff like that, and that's what's in the image that's in most people's heads. Whereas no, unicorns like as big as a woolly mammoth with a great big freaking giant razor sharp horn on the front of its head to ram right through anything that annoys it. He says that God says that it can't be tamed. You know what I mean? It's just too big and wild and dangerous to ever be tamed by man. I think that fits. I think a thing the size of a woolly mammoth with a great big razor sharp horn on the front of its head would fit the description of something that wouldn't be able to be tamed by man. Don't you, Matt?
Yeah, yeah. You notice that everything that went north after the flood really had a bad time. They went up and they got the dire wolf, Neanderthal, which is just a human. They went north, just like the woolly mammoth, which was a species of elephant that went north, which is the same as the dire wolf that went north, and the saber-toothed cat went north. These are just species of cats that all migrated and went north, and there wasn't much food, so they adapted to the cold regions and all ate one another. The mammoth got eaten by the saber-tooth, and the humans ate the mammoth, the saber-tooth, and the dire wolf. Basically, all of them were inbred, and then they died. They didn't kill each other, but they got super isolated, and they eventually bred themselves into extinction. Look up mammoth. They all died because they bred themselves into extinction.
Yeah, because they've literally got the if you Google that, you'll find it everywhere on Google, everywhere. I mean, there's citations from evolutionists all over the place coming out your wazoo. So, you can find all that stuff out for yourself. I mean, someone said in the chat, and I thought that interesting, is where's the evidence for that they had genetic entropy? That they were inbred. Sorry, I mean we've got evidence for that in the genomes, right? That they find the genomes, and have they found evidence in the mitochondrial genome for inbreeding or not, Matt?
Yes, they did. I am pulling up
Okay.
studies right now. I just have to pull them from the folder. And
yeah, so they found that sort of evidence. So
yeah, it's incredible. We have pretty much all the evidence we can need now. The matter of fact, there's somebody on 23andMe that they recently discovered that has over 50% Neanderthal DNA. That's incredibly high. Matter of fact, here's one person that has 20% Neanderthal DNA. 20%. So that's really high. But we're talking about the inbreeding that killed him off. So here's one. Hold on. I'm going to pull up a bunch of different studies to show this guy that we definitely have evidence that it was inbreeding that killed him off because of isolation. And that's what happens in the north. You get cold and you band up in small people, like a nomadic tribe, and you migrate around, and you eventually get stuck. Now, remember, Neanderthals started off in Spain. They were completely vegetarian, and there was lots of things for them to kind of eat down there. They ate pine nuts. They ate mushrooms. They were eating all plant-based things. And then the cold moved in, and they started migrating. And that's when trouble began. And it got colder and colder. They went more north, more north. By the time they got to the upper northern country, that's when they started to go extinct. They got all the way over like to China, and that's where they ran into Denisovan, which the same thing was happening to them, because we've literally found a Denisovan and a Neanderthal that were 50-50 mixed, meaning they bred and had a child, and that child grew up and lived, and they had 50%. That means their dad was 100% Neanderthal from probably Japheth's line, and then Shem's line, which is the Asian territory, had the Denisovan DNA. So, and they had a child that was 50-50 of each. So we know they were human. There's no questions anymore, because humans are the only thing that can breed with other humans. And matter of fact, here's a person I just pulled up that shows that they have massive features like that. No chin, massive eyebrow.
That's like Aboriginal people I know.
Aboriginal, right, exactly.
And there's lots of them. They say the Aboriginal race is being bred out and all that. What a load of rubbish. I mean, I went out to Hart's Range, and have a look where Hart's Range is in the Northern Territory. It's right out in the middle of nowhere. I went out to Hart's Range for Hart's Range Rodeo, and there was like, the Aboriginals there were really, really black, like dark skinned, like they were real Aboriginal people. Like there's not much mixing in those ones, mate. I can tell you, they're pretty purebred, and they're very supremacist too. Aboriginals are the opposite. White people think that the lightest skin and the bluest eyes and blondest hair is the most pure. Well, Aboriginals are the complete opposite. They believe the darkest skin and the darkest everything is more pure. So the lighter you are, the more diluted you are, and stuff like that. So they're actually really, really. It's funny that they're really supremacist, but they don't treat you white people like that. And it's like white people and Aboriginals get on fine in the Northern Territory. There's no angst or hatred between them, or really, if you talk to Aboriginal about most Aboriginals up there about white people, they'll just say, what? Everybody gets on. Like I went one time, I wanted to have a drink, so I just walked into the hostel there where old drunks go after they beat their wives and stuff. And I walked in there and I walked around and said, who's coming out for a drink with me? I don't want to drink by myself. I feel like having a drink and I'm not drinking by myself. I said, who's coming around? And I was walking around poking them in the back and saying, hey, how about you? You know what I mean? So the Aboriginals and the black people, the white people and the black people, and I'll hassle them until someone eventually goes with me and has a drink with me, because I don't like drinking by myself. And I sit around a campfire and tell stories and whatever, and so there's all this stuff about like this Black Lives Matters movie here. I'm sure I shouldn't talk about that, but I mean, white people, black people get on just fine up in the Northern Territory. There's none of this hatred and stuff like that. I like the Aboriginal people up there. They're the ones I prefer to drink with. Like the guys, not the women and stuff like that. I never get involved in that sort of stuff, but just drink with a couple of guys and stuff, sitting around a campfire talking. Yeah, I enjoy that heaps. That's why I'm telling stories. But the Northern Territory was a nice place. But yeah, I met a lot of them up there with those sort of features, with that weak chin and they've got, and another thing that Aboriginals have got real thin sort of calf muscles and legs. So they've got this really distinctive look. Aboriginal people too. They've got the real thin, narrow calf muscles from their knee down to their ankle, and very distinctive and look. So yeah, I know Aboriginal people well, and all this stuff about there's I mean, you see in white people today, they've got people with massive brow ridges in white people today. Hey, Matt.
Oh yeah, I have an entire document that shows that massive morphological features in people even today.
Oh yeah, but you got the you found the differences with the thingo yet? The genetic, explaining why that they were inbred and stuff like that. Did you find?
Oh yeah, already posted those. Okay. You must not be able to see the screen.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I already showed everybody the genetic similarities between us and them. And matter of fact, there's another really good one that reminds me that there is another really great study that says not only that we were inbreeding with them, which is obvious by now, but how much genetic relation we actually do share. Now, this is a really good one because this was shocking for the evolutionist, and it's always good to show what really falsifies them, because they're the ones making the predictions that we're a different species. So anytime they show you they don't like the past either. Remember a long time ago when they showed pictures of Neanderthal? This is what it looked like. This is when they believed Neanderthals looked like in 1909. They showed them as brutish apes with clubs.
Well, I like that picture. Yeah. That's not funny really, because that sucked a lot of people in. That sort of thing is why, like I used to say when I was a kid, that's the image I had of Neanderthals in my head. And when I used to call someone a Neanderthal, it was an insult, calling them something like the 1909 one.
Yeah.
And I'd say to someone, yeah, you Neanderthal, that's what I was thinking, 1909. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, they always draw them as that. By the way, here's a picture of a Aboriginal from Australia that had they were looking at the jaw structure for the teeth. This is a dental study that was done. If you notice, the jaw is exactly the same as ancient Neanderthal. So it just shows you that inbreeding affects the lower jaw region a lot. So when you see like the picture that I made for everybody, man, I have a lot uploaded for you today.
And there is a lot of inbreeding in the Aboriginal population because and I'll tell you why. Because they used to have these. My grandfather worked in Hollywood as a makeup man and become a producer and director and stuff. And when he come back to Australia, and he made a lot of movies, heaps of them. Alex Ezard, his name was, but he made a movie called Jeddah. And it showed that like a guy from a dark skinned tribe fell in love with a woman from a lighter skin, not light skin by any means, but lighter skinned tribe, and that the tribe would never accept it and anything, and in the end it ends up tragically and all that tragedy and all that sort of stuff. But just goes to show that they believe in, you know, that this they used to stay in these clans, so they breed within those clans, and they become really, really heavily inbred, the Aboriginals. And that's probably why we see a lot of the weak chins and stuff like that, because it's like the royal family. I'm not just insulting, you know, black people. We've got white people. Look at the royal families of Europe and the inbreeding there, and then you got the inbreeding in that wiped out entire family lines out of the Egyptian side and stuff like that. So, you know, when you have that sort of attitude towards the outside world, like they did, and like many other white races did, and brown races, and all different types of races everywhere had these stupid things. Yes, inbreeding becomes a big problem, and we see, like Matt was trying to show today, we see it today, and we see it everywhere. So and we see it in the past as well. So it's easy to it's not hard to work out. It's inference in a lot of cases, but it's not hard to work out.
Did you see the question for you? If you not, I'll read it to you. The Tasmanian Aboriginals went extinct, Jason. Is that true?
Well, they say that there's not any. There are some really darker skinned ones. I wouldn't say that there might be any. I don't know, because I've never been into Aboriginal communities here, and I've never really got in with Aboriginal people here. I mean, the Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory and here are just two totally different things. So I just don't ever. I don't know for sure, but I'd say yes, there are some darker skinned ones and that sort of thing. But yeah, mostly that they're gone. They're bred out. Like they were more inbred because, and this is not an insult, because they were more isolated, right? Tasmania is just a small island, and back then we didn't have big ferries that could take cars and trucks across the Bass Strait and stuff like that. So they were cut off from the bigger population of Aboriginals on the mainland. So there was even smaller amount of mixing then, you know, like in the gene pool. So you got lower genetic diversity really badly. So yeah, they pretty much the Tasmanian Aboriginals pretty much bred them, you know, are gone. Yeah. And then there was a lot of, I'm sure there was a lot of violence in the past too and stuff like that. But I mean, it wasn't like what people say, and it's not like that today. And we don't hate each other and stuff like that these days. I mean, they try and sort of play it up like that, but Australians are pretty relaxed about most of that sort of stuff. And there's people have done bad things on both sides. I mean, I could tell you stuff that YouTube would ban this video if I told it, and it's the truth. I mean, it just, you'd probably run to your toilet and vomit. But there's I wouldn't do it. But yeah, it's both sides and anyway. But yeah, so when you get down into small little clans and stuff like that, I'll get back onto the point that the inbreeding goes out of control, and we can see it in today in Aboriginals in the Northern Territory. I mean, they're big guys, a lot of them. I mean, you got guys in tribes. I've been to tribes with black people there, and they're huge, big, giant. Like, I've seen them 6 and 7 foot tall and stuff like that. But you can see the weak chin still and stuff like that, you know, even though they're massive. And they've got some big guys up there, like guys that just grab you by the top of the head and lift you off the ground and, you know, with one arm. You wouldn't want to mess with them. But yeah, you do see it everywhere. So, sorry. I'm going to show this. Yeah. I mean, if that Neanderthal had a haircut and a shave and was walking down the road, you'd just think he was a Russian or something like that, wouldn't you? The picture you've got up on the screen there, Matt.
Yeah, exactly. And look at that. Less different than polar bears are to brown bears. We are directly related to Neanderthal. I mean, we know brown bears and polar bears are related because we watched the polar bear form from the speciation event from brown bears. So we know for a fact, if we know that the brown bear is related to the polar bear, we know that humans and Neanderthal are exactly the same. There's no difference. Matter of fact, look at this. They found the FOXP2 gene, the one that is related to human voice and vision, is exactly the same in Neanderthal. Exactly the same. Yep. Surprise, surprise, right? I know. Here's another good one for people. They were better adapted to the cold. Obviously, they were thicker, stronger, faster. there's no doubt they were early humans living for a really long time. There's no doubt anymore. So Neanderthals were the best evidence for evolution, and now they were some of the best evidence for creation. Pretty funny how that works, huh?
Yeah, that 1909. I mean, imagine how many people got sucked into that 1909 image. I was just laughing thinking of that 1909 image. That's forever when I call someone a Neanderthal, that's what I'll be, when I say it, that's what I'll mean. You know, you 1909 image of a Neanderthal. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's all good. Let's go through some more. Oh, by the way, here's an instrument that Neanderthal made. So try to find a primate somewhere making flutes for music for their kids, and while they're wearing clothing and burying the dead with flowers and doing everything else humans would possibly be doing that didn't have technology at all. So
yeah, that's crazy. And they got that thing that they twirl around that looks like when it's spinning at a certain rate, it looks like a deer running or something like that, doesn't it?
Yes, that's a good one as well. Matter of fact, before we move on, I want to know what your opinion is on this. We found a Neanderthal that was shot in the head. Okay,
yeah.
so this is the bullet hole, and it was shot in the base of the skull, and the bullet protruded out the like the foramen magnum area. So hold on, the kid's screaming.
That's all right.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
This is called the Broken Hill skull. And when they found it, they go, well, it's just another normal Neanderthal. Let me show you a side. Clearly a Neanderthal, larger bones in the skull, a nose bone, clearly human. No fangs for teeth, large brain casing. So what they did is when they saw the bullet hole, they go, what in the world is this? So they started to investigate. They go, well, maybe this isn't an actual bullet. Something else had to happen. So they started investigating, but they said the trajectory and the speed was so much that it mimics a bullet. So they said, my guess, which they didn't have, is that maybe a slingshot with a small rock did it. Because you know how you make a wrist rocket? I don't know if they had those back then, but I don't see why not. Because nothing else can account for the speed to go through the entire skull like it did. Now that's perplexing, but that also shows that these are just humans, and why in the world would this skull, not fossilized by the way, or even if it is, this is showing that something very weird is going on with Neanderthal.
They're not. Most of them are not fossilized. It's like you have the bone. You got people talking about the 70, sometimes 70-80% of Neanderthal bones are not fossilized, but then you can see online, like I've got links to things online saying that if human bones are buried in the ground, and obviously unless they're not mineralized very quickly, if they're not mineralized, then they turn to dust within 100 years. So I'm not saying all bones will turn to dust within 100 years, but if bones can turn to dust within 100 years, then how is it that you've got Neanderthal bones that have lasted for 200,000-300,000 years and not turned into dust, but they're not fossilized yet either? So that's a real big that is a paradox. That's a big problem for them. There's no, it's buried in the ground, whatever, that it should have lasted 200,000 years. And in some cases, they're finding these things where water can, trickle down through it, and it's not degraded away. I don't think so. These things have been gone in hundreds of years with water going through them, not, in tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. Not a chance.
Yeah, exactly. I found another one from the guy who mentioned Jack Kuzo in the thing, and he has a great one because he shows the morphological change in the bones and development of somebody and a Neanderthal. Now, one thing that Jack Kuzo kind of missed that I picked up on was that I'm going to show you a picture of a Neanderthal child. Now, Jack Kuzo is a dentist, so he wasn't really looking anywhere else except for the the mouth, the jaws, to make sure that they line up, right? That's a specialty. He's seeing if the jaws were actually human and if they change over time and how old the person was that actually had the dental formation going on. We know that in the theory of aging that there's something called the Hayflick's limit. You live based on, they believe anyway, determining how long it takes for you to get through puberty. So if you reach puberty at the age of, let's say, 5 years old, you're only going to live to be about 25 years old. So humans go through puberty much later at around 13 to 15 years of age. So therefore we can live to be pretty well easily 80, 85, no problem. So the longer it takes to get through puberty, the longer you live. Well, Jack Kuzo actually found that the Neanderthal children hadn't gone through puberty yet, but the child that you're looking at is around 15 years of age. And they're still quite young. Matter of fact, you can even notice, this is what I noticed, is they don't even have a brow ridge yet. So if we know that a brow ridge can form later in life, in later teens and adulthood, then we know that morphological change of a skull is actually more dependent on these epigenetic changes that take place because of the environment. And the skull of a child, of course, is still developing. So if you don't have a brow ridge by the time you're an adult, well, you're probably not going to get one later. So therefore, this person who's 15 isn't even close to going through puberty yet because they have no signs of a brow ridge yet. And we can see this today. And I wanted to do an experiment and see if I could find people today. Oh, go ahead.
What? Brow ridges also, really pronounced brow ridges can also mean old age, because the only things to keep growing as you get older are your skull, and particularly your brow ridges, your nose and your ears and stuff like that. So is that true or not?
Yeah, it can be. Definitely. Ears grow continuously, but very, very slowly. Usually they grow in people that are inbred even more. And not really sure why, but it seems to be, again, a genetic issue. And here's an example of that. Ears protrude more and grow faster from inbreeding.
That's bad, man. That is like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never realized they're brothers too, aren't they?
They are brothers. Yes.
Yes, I remember that.
So, the nose, the ear, anything that's cartilage based is going to grow. But
I wonder what Hitler would have thought if he knew that blue eyes are a genetic mistake or a pro. I'd love to see the look on his face. I'd love to go back in a time machine and just pull him back to the day and say, "Look, Hitler, you're inbred and breaking down, mate. Your blue eyes are a sign of that, like bad, not good. It's not, it's down, not up. I can just see the look, the smile wipe off his face. Yeah, funny.
Yeah, it would, huh? Here's another Neanderthal young adult that was found. You can also see that there is no brow ridge, even though it's a child still growing up. Neanderthals are notorious for being known as Neanderthal because of their brow ridge. So when we find the Neanderthal and they have a larger head, it also shows that they probably had more intelligence. And we know that the part of their skull that is protruded, that's larger, is the back part of the skull, which is associated with vision. And we know their vision was better than ours now, based on the fact that the things that they worked on and carved were more intricate than we can even see today. So early people right off the arc had a lot better genetics than us. They had more of a genome and they lived longer lives. They were stronger, they were faster. Basically, they were able to test these things based on finding tracks of Neanderthal that were running, and they judged the speed on which they were running and were like, incredible, this guy's faster than Olympian, and he's running barefoot in mud while carrying something in his left hand. How is this possible? It's because it refutes the evolutionary concept that these things that they find are discrepancies, but they're not problems for us as creationists, because they're exactly what we would expect to see if ancient man was better and they were living longer. And this is the evidence that we see. So frankly, the evolutionary ones have to make up these rescue devices, and we just go with it. We're just like, well, there it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. If someone can run through mud like that and while carrying a heavy weight, they knew he was carrying a heavy weight because he was sort of loping to one side as he was running. So It was like probably been out hunting, had got some deer or something. It was carrying some whole deer while running. What was it, 38 miles an hour, wasn't it, Matt?
Well, I think that was kilometers an hour. So he was running like 24, 25.
Oh, 40 kilometers an hour. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So like 40 kilometers an hour, man. That's fast.
Barefoot in water, it's fast.
And barefoot in mud.
Yeah.
That's like I used to live up in a place at the back of my house was a tea tree plantation, and there was all swamps and marshes and big mud flats and all sorts of stuff running through there. So I've done my fair share of walking through mud. I've been in mud where it's like quicksand. You think you have to be real cluey to get out of it, otherwise it'll suck you down deeper. It's yeah. So I see I know what it's like to run through mud, and there's just no way that any human alive today could do 40 kilometers an hour through any sort of mud. I don't think so. And it was deep mud that the Neanderthal was running through too, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I've run through deep mud. I could do about 1 kilometer per 2 hours or something.
There's a picture for you. As they said, have you seen this? And they posted a link. I can't click on the link because I'm in the background right now, but I'll find that later. If you can post that in the comment section, not in live chat, I can get to it later as well. But what were we getting at as well?
What did you want me to post again?
What's that?
Did you say you want me to post something?
Oh, no. I said somebody posted something. I asked them to post it in the comment section after, so we can all see it rather than there, because I can't click on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so when anybody sees skeletons like this, there's a way to determine if these are humans. I mean, it's pretty transparent and apparent to me that these are humans based on those criteria from the skull. But if we had any skin or soft tissue, we would really be able to tell. And I'll tell you why, because that's when we really see the difference. Humans have a subcutaneous layer of fat that runs under our skin. No primate does. Primates don't have any pigment to their skin, which means when you shave them, they're completely pale. They don't have any white skin. They don't have any black skin, nothing. They have nothing for that. But humans can range in skin color based on where we live very quickly and very easily. Humans' hair is completely different than the hair on a primate. They have fur. We have human hair. So it's totally different. So when we're looking at these things, I created a list for everybody. And this list really makes the evolutionists mad because it's an easy way for us to tell and differentiate between humans and primates. And I like to share this with everybody so they can use it themselves. And we can see that they have the parabolic jaw shape, the teeth that are aligned, the toes that are aligned, the large forehead, the cranium, the thumb placement, the hyoid bone that's in the throat, the no bacillum, which is actually only in humans, not primates at all, the number of ribs we have compared to them, the number of lumbars in our spine. All these things are so easy for us to identify a human being in the fossil record, no matter if they're pygmies in the rainforest at 3 foot tall or massive Nordic people in the north at 6'8". So it really just doesn't matter, and it's easy to tell. Genetics is where we shine the most, though. It's genetically that we can see the differences. But unfortunately, genetics can't be obtained and gathered from all fossils. So because of that, we have to use morphology, and that's where the storytelling comes from. It's because the less evidence they have, the more they can storytell, and they're allowed to lie, and they can get away with it because nobody can prove them wrong because they've made up a story. So it's kind of like saying all watermelons are purple on the inside, but the second you cut them, they change color. You can never prove that wrong. So that's what they've done. They've just made up a theory that's unfalsifiable because they know that they don't have the evidence for it to actually fit to begin with. So kind of a shame for them, really. But, we're used to it at this point. That's why they have to deny all of these, all the new evidence. Kind of funny. But, yeah, Aaron won't be debunking any of this anytime soon. He's too far behind the times. Arn's
Oh, yeah.
way too old school for this. He doesn't know about any of this stuff. He's irrelevant now. Picking on him is mostly for popularity. I made fun of his flood video series because it was easy to do and it's really popular. And I'm tired of Christians not having any content to refute him. Tons of people go to. He has one flood video that has over 1 million views. One of his flood videos. So if he's got that many people watching his flood series that are obviously atheists, bringing Christians to go watch it so that they can be deconverted, then it's time for Christians to have a video that shows everything he says is complete nonsense. So it was about time, because I made a book on it, but nobody likes to read. So I figured it was time for a video, and he'll never touch the video. He can't, because he's made to look stupid in everything that he says, because he's wrong on everything that he says. That's why he can't refute it. That's why, imagine if somebody made a video like that on me, refuting everything that I said. Of course I would refute it. I'd make a video like in the next week refuting everything I said. Yet he's just going to let that slide. Why do you think that is? It's clear he can't refute it. I mean, he's been proven wrong with everything that he said in the video. It's just, what else is there to do to the guy at this point? It's just like kicking a puppy. It's pointless at this point.
But it's still always fun to do. His explanation of things, I just sit there and I can't believe it. Sometimes I watch him talk.
So you see these things, everybody? You see all those skulls right there? You know how we know all those are primates? Because of the exact criteria that I put above. You can look over and go, look at that. They don't have any forehead. There's no forehead on any of them. They don't have large brain casings. I don't care if these things are 6 feet tall and stand right next to humans and might look the same.
And I don't care where the former magnum is either. If it's got a head like, and that's another thing I just wanted to say quickly. I'm glad you put that picture up there. I'm really glad, because you know they've got all these different skulls and they line them up in different things. Have they got the infants of these things? No, I bet you they don't. I bet you they don't. I bet they don't have like infants of, you know, they got this Nutcracker man and all that. They can show a progression from infants up to like when Nutcracker man infant was born up until when a full grown Nutcracker man. Can they show that? No, they can't, and they wouldn't have anything like that. So when they find these skulls, they're just finding literally these skulls, one here and a fragment over there, and one over there, maybe one every here and there, but hardly any. You know what I mean? They don't find a progression of anything anywhere in any way, shape, or form. So when they line these skulls up, it is pure imagination. It is just outright pure imagination. It's got to do with the orbital tilt of the skull, all sorts of things, and where the former magnum will be, to where the skull, the head faces while it's running along on its all fours and stuff like that. There is so many things that with this, you know, that it blows it away. But anyway, sorry, Matt, go on.
No, I just put another picture up there because I wanted to prove to everybody exactly what you said, which is, look, here's one skull that they had, and they created 3 completely separate drawings of what the creature must have looked like. One on the right is a human with some big old beard. Another one is like a monkey in the middle, totally primate. And then one on the far left is completely covered in hair and is trying to smile like a human, but it's more like a gorilla look. So they got a gorilla one. They got a see, all from one skull. Look at the creative capacity of evolutionists, and like how much they're allowed to just post as evidence and fact when they're all wrong. It's just crazy. This is what you're looking at, is a skull of a complete primate, by the way, but they're trying to make it look human as much as possible. And because they don't have any evidence of these things, they know they can just lie and say whatever they want, and they get away with it.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me, is that there is no real evidence for it at all, and there's no progressions of anything, not from their young to an adult one, or any other sort of progression through the fossil record, like, you know, to prove these things aren't just some, you know, extinct species of ape that they found, and they've just, you know, look, imagined, you know, when they put them all together and then lined them all up and imagined them in order. Of the way they evolved. It's complete imagination, and it is.
Exactly. I did just now find something that you brought up, so I can show everybody. Give me 1 second to load it. It is that pendant that was made by Neanderthals that could see so good that they created a running deer through the forest. And the Neanderthal made this, and they were they would put this on a string and they would spin it around, and it shows a deer of some sort running
as it's spinning. Yeah, it would too. You could see that as it was spinning. Optical illusion. It looked like the deer was running. That's amazing.
Yes.
So they invented movies, man.
Yeah, living outside in horrible conditions in the snow, and they're still making things for their own kids to show you. That shows you a human criteria, right? Like, who wouldn't want to do something for their kids, even in this horrible region where you're having to hunt for mammoth just for something to eat, because the only thing that grows is grass for the mammoths to eat. Horrible conditions, and they're out there making pendants from whatever they can find, from carved bone of the animal that they just ate, for their kids to play with. Incredible.
Yeah, no, that shows some pretty amazingly fine tools too. Like they've even drawn like hair on that creature with sharp little scratches to make hair. That's pretty fine.
Yeah. Here's an Aboriginal from Australia, by the way. Look at the brow ridge on this guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I've seen Aboriginals like that, man. That yeah, I've seen heaps of them.
Yeah,
tell me, they're not just one. That's not just like one guy that was just one in a million. There's heaps of them. Yeah,
exactly. Oh yeah, they're everywhere. The evidence is just so overwhelming at this point. I can't believe people like Dan Cardinal still think that they're a subspecies. That's insane. Humans don't speciate. They never have. That's crazy to think that you can just claim that something's speciated. And pretty bizarre claim.
Yeah, so he's he's basically saying epigenetics. Yeah, that's really good.
Right.
Just claiming epigenetics. It's speciated epigenetics. It's like, how did it? They got no evidence for any of it, and they claim that this stuff happens. I mean, how does something speciate or change? Well, it goes into a different environment, and then depending whether it's hot or cold, depending on what sort of genes get switched on and what genes get switched off, and that throws epigenetic switches, which causes things in your body to change, and then you can pass that on to your kids too, because they've proven it with rats and mice. You give rats the smell of fruit and shock them every time that they get it, and then you get the babies when they come out and bring them up, and you don't show them any of that, and then you give them the smell of fruit, and they're scared of the smell of fruit. Sort of when they're that can be passed on, but it doesn't last for very long. It changes back pretty quick, but it just proves that things can be passed on and things can change very quickly. It's not. It doesn't require mutations and lots of time. Let's put it that way.
Yes, exactly.
Changes. Yeah.
Here's a question, and before I move on to the question, it's like this picture I showed shows how human hair grows out of the head. In chimpanzees and any primate, no hair grows out of the top of the head anywhere past just a few inches, because it's fur protection, and it's not very protective to have long hair growing out of the top of your head. It can get stuck if you're running around in between brushes and shrubs. Human hair grows for years at a time. But I just thought I would share that with real quick. Here's a question that says, anthropologists give ages of human skeletons. For human skeletons, 400-year-old man would look something like an 80-year-old to them. Science with the Bible would increase our knowledge greatly, don't you think?
Yeah,
I definitely do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, a matter of fact, it's being dogmatic when you only believe in evolution. The fact that we study evolution and creation allows us to have more freedom than it does with just evolution, because evolution allows nothing else. That's why they can't look at a global flood, because they're not allowed to review anything from catastrophism, because of Charles Lyell, who came along and said, we got to get rid of Noah's flood from the sciences. So he made it against the rules, essentially, to even consider catastrophism as part of the theory of evolution. Because he knows the second you start actually investigating, you're going to find that these geological layers that they invented to get rid of Noah from the sciences, or I'm sorry, it says Moses from the sciences. Those were his exact words, by the way. then what do we find? We find that the biblical creation model is true because we've already found it genetically. We know that there's low average pairwise differences, which means low genetic diversity in all life on Earth. So that means all life went through a recent bottleneck. So the genetic evidence already tells us that a global flood happened. But because of the dogmatic view of evolution, they can't think for themselves because they go, well, you know, the geological record that we made up doesn't show a global flood. Well, gee, I wonder why. See how they can't think outside the box because it doesn't allow critical thinking to take place.
Well, how do you get a 7-foot tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed German and a 4.5-foot, 5-foot tall Amazon pygmy from dark black Amazon pygmy from the rainforests of, you know, and they only have a difference of 0.012% or a 99.988% similarity. You know, how's that the case? If we evolved on different, if the races evolved on different evolutionary branches, then how is it that you just get something that can't be any more ethnically diverse than each other? I mean, you couldn't get much more ethnically diverse than that, right? And they'll only be so close, you know, genetically is insane. It's just crazy.
Yeah, you're right. That's another thing too, because that's why they have a horrible problem with the humans, because they have to say like, well, you know, humans are an anomaly, but the rest of the animal kingdom is easily explained with evolution. Well, obviously not, because they have the genetic boundaries that we're finding that show that there is that shouldn't exist to begin with. A genetic boundary is basically looking at mutation rates. I should do a video on just that, but here's one that was interesting. Neanderthal genome included harmful mutations that made the hominids around 40% less reproductively fit than people today. So that means that their inbreeding caused a lot of mutations to build up and run them into extinction. So that's essentially what's happened with the Neanderthal. People just like you went north, and it was so cold and frigid that they just band together in a small tribe, and they moved around following the mammoth to eat them. And they kept going more north and more north and more north because the mammoth were looking for food, that essentially they just got so inbred from only breeding within that area that their genetics made them less fit and less fit and less fit until eventually they were deformed. And the evolutionists like that deformity because they can say, look, they had more mutations, which proves they're older, which it doesn't. It shows that they were highly mutated from inbreeding and isolation and the things that they were doing. We know that when you smoke food, for example, you cause lots of carcinogens to form. Carcinogens cause more mutations to form. So therefore, they're barbecuing their foods. They're heating everything because they need to stay warm. They're breathing in lots of smoke at a constant basis, which causes more somatic mutations. So therefore, they're causing massive bombardment for mutations that makes them look older. So therefore, the evolutionist comes along and they go, well, look at this. We found a human species that looks older than humanity. Therefore, it's proof of evolution. But we know that there was a bottleneck that reset the genetic diversity in all life. And Neanderthals aren't fossilized. So if we're finding them in the same layers as human beings, then clearly they're nothing different. Because remember, humans bred with Neanderthals. So clearly they're not in a different rock layer. That's obvious. So if we know that they lived at the same time as us and something happened to them, they were up in the north, and we know that they were inbreeding, therefore we can explain the genetic diversity. Evolutionists, they just say, oh, that more mutations mean they're older. No, it doesn't, because the genetic bottleneck would have reset their genetic diversity. Do you understand? It's clear. It's obvious. Humans weren't living before the last bottleneck. Even evolutionists admit that. The one that they believe happened 200,000 years ago, where primitive man went in, modern day man came out. Well, guess what? If there was no modern day man before that to breed with Neanderthal, then Neanderthal and human beings couldn't have been there, could they? It's basic common sense. I'm getting mad. So if you have massive amounts of genetic diversity in one group of people, let's say Africans, and you know that there's another group of people that has less genetic diversity, and you go, well, I guess the one that has less genetic diversity is younger. No, it doesn't prove that at all anymore, because we know genetic diversity comes down to mutations. If mutations can accumulate faster in some people than in others, then it's proof that they could have been there from the exact same time. And what the lifestyle is a determining factor on the mutations. So if you have one group of people that live in a small community and they reproduce at faster rates and younger ages, called a generation time, then they're going to have more mutations than the ones that choose not to do that. Like the Amish people, like Parsons found. The Amish people wait a very long time before they have kids, and they have a ton of them, all the way up until women can't even have kids anymore. So as they look and appear to be the less mutated group of people because of that fact, but because of those factors, not that factor. So that's just one of the factors. So then we look at other people groups, like in Africa, where they live in small people groups and they have kids at the age of 15. Well, guess what? More mutations are going to be compiling up generation after generation, because they've had twice the amount of generations as the normal people groups. So of course it's going to make it look like they're older. It's not because humanity's from Africa. It's because of the practices that they do in Africa. It's common sense. Anyway, this is your interview. I just took over.
No, I like listening. Keep going. It's fine. And nothing. No, I like listening to stuff about that. Keep talk about it all you like.
Yeah, apes and monkeys don't have a nose, a bridge, a bone. Correct. Yeah. You don't have that bone right there. And sunglasses wouldn't even rest. Yeah. Exactly. But give monkeys sunglasses. They have to lean their head back because they have to rest them on their lips because they don't have a nose bone. Exactly. It's kind of funny. I mean, really, you see, everybody says young Earth creation doesn't have any evidence. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, honestly. What I say young Earth creation does is all we have to do is what evolution does. We have to be able to explain what we see in the world around us. So you hear all the time evolutionists say, evolution is just the best theory we have to explain the genetic diversity that we see. First of all, that's wrong. It's not the best. And how do I know it's not the best? Because they can't explain mutations. Their theory is based on mutations. Do you understand what that means? That means if they can't make predictions based on mutations, then they aren't the best model, are they? No. Since we do make predictions based on mutations and mutation rates, we can predict the future outcomes. We also predict an entirely different outcome in the future based on, we see genetic degradation from Mendel's accountant, the one used by NIH, National Institute of Health, that we actually see a degradation of the genome. So we look at disease as something bad and worse. Evolution says, no, selection will remove the worst ones. Don't worry about it. So we even view medicine different than evolution. And we better explain the genetic diversity than they do, because we can look at the observable mutation weights and we don't have to come up with excuses about why it doesn't match our theory, because that's
Yeah, yep. I gotta. I love that one. That's my favorite one. I think this just proves it. Like, they get the mutation rates of today and they go, we're going to prove these stupid creationists right, and we'll insult it by calling it mitochondrial Eve. And it'll be an insult to it, and then we'll show them, we'll test the rates and we'll show them, and they kill it 6,500 years. What? 6,500 years back to the first woman? No, that can't be right. But then a few years later, they come back, better equipment, better data. 6,000 years. What? 6,000 years back to the first woman. So then they go away for 10 years and they do all these mathematical equations and, make all these mistakes. And finally, after 10 years, they go, okay, we've got we got this imagined, okay, we imagined that it was slower in the past. We can't ever go back in a time machine. We can't test it. It's never going to happen. So we're going back in the past. So we imagine these slower rates in the past. They must have happened because we know creation isn't true and evolution is true. So this is the way it had to have happened. The mature, and so they basically make up these mutation rates that they can never test and never existed, and to cover their story, because the mutation rates we observe today coming from them, not us, coming from them, goes back 6,000 years. If you look at the observed rates, back 6,000 years to the first woman. And if they come along and try to say, yes, but you can know these slower mutation rates over here in this people group over here and blah, well, Parsons blows that away. So if you want to see all that, go and look at Parsons. And If you think you can refute him, then go right ahead and go and collect your Nobel Prize too after you refute him, because you.
Yeah, it's evolution that has the genetic problem. You see, this is what we believe. We believe God created two people, and that 10 generations passed, and there was a global flood. They got on the Noah and his family got on the ark, and they got off. They lived until the Tower of Babel, which was another genetic bottleneck, where essentially people exploded, and we diversified around the world, and we have modern civilization. So we have two bottlenecks, essentially, where humanity was put down.
I know. Those two inbred guys, they could just breed with a couple of inbred women, and then out of them should come the entire modern, sophisticated human race. This sort of thing. That sort of thing. Right? That's basically what you're saying. I mean, it's as likely as that, right?
Yes, exactly. This is what evolution believes. They believe that the population went in, and there was probably a Katoba catastrophe or some kind of a volcano, and all of humanity got reduced to a small group of people, and they lived for tens of thousands of years in a small population, and then it happened again, and then it happened again, and then it happened again. Do you guys realize how counterproductive this would be? How many fixed mutations would have happened if this really occurred? But what do we see when we look inside of humanity today? We only see a maximum amount of fixed mutations in African people by the number of 24. Now, given how many mutations how fast mutations build up, there should be hundreds and hundreds of mutations minimum, but based on how fast the mutation rate is. But in their scenario, imagine how many hundreds there would be. How many hundreds after all these different bottlenecks in these small populations living for thousands of years? I couldn't even give you a number, it would be so high, but that is not what we see, because it's not true. It's literally that simple. What they believe is a myth with no evidence at all. So, yeah. And somebody asked, Parsons. Yes. Parsons is a FBI specialist right now. He works for the FBI, but he's a scientist and he's a geneticist. And in 1997, he did a study to determine the mutation rate in human beings, because he wanted to determine who is related to who. Because if you're going to convict somebody of a crime and you find blood somewhere and you want to know, like, did this guy do it, or did his dad do it, or did his son do it? You have to know the mutation rate. And the reason why you have to know it is because you have to determine whether or not there could be a mutation that's new in the father or in the son that wasn't there in the parent, because you might blame the wrong person. So if you look in the blood and you find a mutation that's there, and then you test the blood of the father and it's not there, and the crime scene has a mutation in the blood, you know the son did it. So therefore, he wanted to make sure that there was an empirical rate to determine for the FBI to use to test and make sure that they're convicting the right people. So what he did is he said, yes, there's a mutation that can reach fixation every 33 generations. So this was extremely fast, meaning that there is essentially a new mutation that pops up every second generation, but it doesn't reach fixation until about 33. So therefore, if we know that there's a new mutation every second generation, we can figure out, based on that evidence, what the blood is going to be used to determine and convict somebody. So Parsons said, okay, we figured out that the most recent common ancestor of all living humans today was somebody named mitochondrial Eve that lived 6,500 years ago. These numbers didn't fly for the evolutionary community, so he probably thought he was wrong. So what he did is, the very next year, he grabbed somebody else and he said, let's combine our forces and let's double the amount of content we have to study. So what he did is he teamed up with a guy named Howell in 1998, and they ran another 370 studies, essentially. And out of all the different blood that was tested, they got the empirical rate, which we use today, that again shows that there was one mutation every, 11 mutations out of 300 generations, essentially the exact same results that he got the first time. So he again confirmed that the most recent common ancestor was somewhere around 6,500 years ago. And since then, multiple other studies have been done. And I can show you those studies because I save everything. And I will pull them up right here for everyone to see. These are multiple different studies called pedigree studies. Pedigree studies are what are done using father, son, grandson, or essentially three generations. So they're the most accurate because you can follow them. Evolutionists use something called the pedigree mutation rate, which is based off the fossil record. And since they made it up, it can't be accurate. And they know it's not accurate now because all the pedigree rates are faster. So what do we look at? Howell in 1996 was the first one. He actually found that there was one mutation every 25 generations. Unfortunately, he didn't test males. He only tested females. So while he was going back to the drawing board to come back in 2003, I believe, or 2004, in the meantime, multiple other people did these tests. And look at what they found. Every single one of them, one mutation every 36 generations, one mutation every 44, one mutation every 33, one mutation every 30. Essentially, everything was pointing to humanity existing for only just thousands of years, not even tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So these genetic bottlenecks are what the evolutionists had to do to rescue their theory. Remember, they predicted life went back millions of years. And when they found that it didn't, they had to invent a genetic bottleneck. And guess what they said when they went to their own fossil record? That's right, they couldn't find any evidence of it. They couldn't. So imagine that. Imagine having to rely on something that's not even there. And how do I know? Because they say it themselves. And I'm looking for it right now. Oh, genetic boundary. I'll pull that one up for you. And rock layers, where are you? Sorry, I have a desktop that would give you guys a heart attack. I pretty much know where everything is. I'm having trouble with this one. I must have moved it. As I'm looking for this, I'm going to share with you a genetic study that was done. And I'm going to explain to you what genetic boundaries are, as I'm looking for them admitting that they should not have found this information. So excuse me while I look for this, and Jason must be AFK. It's okay. It's okay. I can go on. I can go on a tirade. Just let me find. Wow. That is bizarre. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to show you guys that they admitted that there is no evidence of a genetic bottleneck in their own fossil record, but yet we know that there was a bottleneck because of this very 2018 genetic study that was done. So let me check the comment section before we move on. Okay, good. Nothing really. Okay, genetic bottlenecks are interesting. So they reset mitochondrial DNA, and essentially they tell us what happened in the past. Now, here are some pictures of those genetic boundaries. I made these, and I made them from what's called the CO1 gene because it's one of the fastest mutating regions inside the mitochondria. And this gene alone is the one that's been tested because it's in everything, because it's super cheap and it's super easy. They were the ones that discovered that the genetic bottleneck didn't just happen to land life, but it literally happened to everything, including aquatic life. This was so shocking to the people on this study itself that they couldn't even believe it. Matter of fact, one of them even said this. He said, "This conclusion is very surprising, and I fought against it as hard as I could." Against what? Against the actual data. His mind could not fathom it because he was so blinded by his evolutionary mindset, because of the indoctrination, because of the fact that evolution must be true, but yet the evidence is telling us that it's not. We're literally looking at what's called low average pairwise differences in all genetic life. And it's called ADP. And it shouldn't be like that unless, of course, things went through a bottleneck. And look, for the planet's 7.6 billion people, 500 million house sparrows, or 100,000 sandpipers, which are birds. Genetic diversity is about the same. So how could genetic diversity be the same unless there was a global catastrophe that killed all life? It's pretty obvious Noah's flood is true based on the genetic evidence. They can deny that and go, well, it's not in the fossil record. I guess it's not true. They can play whatever mental gymnastics they want. But unfortunately, the evidence inside our own DNA doesn't lie. So they have to invent that the bottleneck happened probably 200,000 years ago or something like that. And I just found it. Here it is. Unfortunately for them, their own fossil record lies to them. There is no trace in the geological column of any event in the last 200,000 years that slashed the population. But yet it was big enough to kill all life on Earth. I want you to think about that for a second. How retarded can you be? I'm sorry. And look at this. Look at what he says in the very bottom here. Although it's easy to imagine that humans passed through a bottleneck 170,000 years ago, it's hard to believe that exactly the same thing happened in all species. Did herrings really pass through an equally recent bottleneck, and anchovies too? You see what's going on, people? The evidence tells us that everything was wiped out, exactly like Noah's flood says it. And then they look in their made-up column, and they don't see it because they don't realize they made it up. So they can't find what they need to find. And they go, well, I mean, it happened, but we don't know why. We don't know how. So we're just going to say, oh, well, it happened anyway. Imagine if we used that argument. Imagine if we just go, oh, well, God did it for absolutely everything. They would jump on us and be like, you guys are nuts. You guys don't have any evidence for anything. It's, oh, God did it. Oh, God did this. Oh, God did that. But we're saying, look at the genetic evidence that tells you this is true. And you guys are going to have to backpedal all the time and say, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe, maybe a volcano couldn't have done it. I guess something else did it. See what I mean? They're backed into a corner. Evolution has never looked so pathetic, and creation has never been so strong. And the reason why is because young Earth creation is true. And the more we learn about science, the more evidence we're going to get, and the better it's going to get for us. So time is on our side. Isn't that ironic? That evolution is always like, oh, well, you know, time is, the more we learn, the better. No, the more we learn, the better it gets for us. And which is ironic because schools around the world only teach evolution. It's the only theory protected by law. So they're banning creation everywhere. So the fact that we have such a strong model, even though evolution is taught everywhere, is pretty ironic to me, don't you think? I mean, you would think with 99% of all the scientists in the fields trying to find evidence for evolution, and they can't even refute young Earth creation. That's pretty hilarious to me. I mean, in their minds, they might think so, but there's a reason they avoid debating against us, because they know it's like, well, it's hypothetical, and everything being hypothetical. I mean, well, if your story and your myth is based on hypothetical evidence, and we're showing you the observable evidence, which points to our model, and you keep pointing to the hypothetical, I'm sorry, your myth is destroyed. It's over. Evolution is garbage.
Yeah, Bella. Bella! Sorry, I was just my dog just kept from trying to push over and push in.
No problem. No problem.
I didn't realize I have to just tell them to lie down.
Don't worry, everybody. Bananas and bears are related. Just keep that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you think. That's a fact right there.
Banana bear chimera.
Don't worry. They all started out from a common ancestor, and the banana evolved so that we could eat it. Just remember that.
Yeah.
Nonsense. So, I was getting to this. This is a genetic boundary line that I showed from the CO1 gene. And I included Neanderthal, even though I forgot to put a picture of a Neanderthal-looking human next to the modern-day human being. But what you see is the genetic bottleneck, essentially from the lowest on the left to the highest amount of mutations on the right. So humans have very low genetic differences between 0 and 20 between every living human being on the earth today. Chimpanzees have extremely high. The lowest they have to us is around, I would say, 25 or 65. And then it goes all the way up to about 70. And then there's a bull. And then there's a wolf. And these genetic boundaries are in everything. So essentially, if you look in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria was reset, if it was reset to a common ancestor, everything would show mutations going back to that. And then there would be a split, just like you would find in the dogs that are all related. Well, guess what? All dogs came from a wolf. So you can follow the genetic boundary back to the wolf. And it's very easy to do, but you can't do that with humans. You can't do that with chimpanzees. You can't do that with gorillas. You can't do that from orangutan. You know why? Because these are each individually created kinds. We are not one kind. That is not true. And the genetic evidence shows us this. And it's the genetic boundaries that this study is talking about. So if there are genetic boundaries and they're separating us, that shouldn't exist. And you can follow it back to the family and the order level. The more, and they said the more we test, the more we'll be able to determine what's related. Well, guess what? They tested everything. I mean, there isn't, you can go into the genetic database and you can look at everything that they tested. That's how I was able to make this chart, because you can literally go and compare the CO1 gene mutation differences between us and primates, between us and anchovies. It doesn't matter. You can make your own chart. It's very easy to do. Well, it's not easy because it takes hours and days to make, but I'm just saying that it's something you can literally do if you wanted to, because this is my addiction and I want to give you guys the best evidence that we have. This is that evidence. Genetics is our best evidence for young Earth creation. And it's funny because they say, no, genetics is the best evidence for evolution. Genetics is the worst evidence for evolution, because remember, in the 1960s, Karl Popper came out and said, if evolution is true, deep time would erase all evidence of genetic relation between all life on Earth. Therefore, nothing would share genetic commonality between another, because things that have lived for hundreds of millions of years. What did we find? The exact opposite is true. We all share massive amounts of genetic similarity, because life is not old and we all use the same essential material to make everything. Animals were created the same as human beings. They're created out of the dust of the ground. They came out of the earth a day before. So of course there's going to be genetic similarities, because there's only how many amino acids to begin with. So how many things do you expect there to be? So of course we're going to be more genetically similar to something that lives in the same region, eats the same things, lives in the same climate as us. That should be expected. Why in the world would we be expected to be more similar to a freaking fish that lives in the cold Arctic regions of the ocean than we would a primate that lives in the exact same region and eats the same thing as us? It's just stupid to think otherwise. So when they think it's evidence for evolution, they haven't thought critically about what that actually means. Shocker, I know. Let me read the comments real quick. I always forget to look at my comment section, but you can go ahead, Jason. I was going off on a tirade. By the way, if you guys like the technical stuff, I really wanted to get technical one day and talk about these genetic boundaries. And what I did is
do it now. We can start talking about it now if you want. I mean, you've already started, and I mean, it doesn't really matter. Mine's pretty simple, my thing, and I've already said it. So it's
yeah, we can touch on a little bit. I did think I showed all the pictures that I uploaded for you anyway. We can go back to it real quick, but this is a study you can find on creationist clothing, and you can also find it on academia.org and ResearchGate. It has the same title. It's the invalidation of the evolutionary molecular clock neutral theory. And what it is in it is, I'm not just focusing on invalidating the evolution theory. I could care less about evolution. I want to prove young Earth creation. So therefore, I make predictions of young Earth creation and for young Earth creation. And in the process of doing it, I invalidated the neutral theory. Like I said, I don't try to disprove evolution, because it's not the goal. The goal is to prove our model and to falsify our model. So what you do is you make predictions. So I predicted that if cats are related and they come from one cat kind that was on the ark, what species was it? And what's the mutation rate? And what is the mutation rate, and why would we expect to see it? So therefore, that battery is a representation of the mitochondria that's in all cats. And the mitochondria is like a battery. And essentially, if a battery is full, then mutations accumulate and the battery degenerates. And the more it degenerates, the more mutations build up, and the more we can predict how fast that battery is being decharged in each different species related to one another. So there's where that genetic boundary comes in. I haven't done one for cats, but essentially it's that. So what I did is I wanted to say, which one of these cats was on the ark? Which one wasn't? What are the future predictions for cats? And I did all that in the study. If I wanted to give you a quick rundown of what that would be, that cat in the middle would be the cat that was most likely on the ark. It has the genetic potential to produce everything that you see on the screen. It has the most heterozygous genes. It has the largest genome, and it has the potential to breed small cats, large cats, freckles, lines, stripes, no stripes at all. It doesn't matter. The genetic potential for everything resides in that single cat. It also has the highest amount of genetic mutations that are fixed, meaning it's probably the oldest species of cat we have alive today. Now, again, that cat that was on the ark could be dead, but if it's living, it's most likely that cat species that came off. Now, we believe in speciation, and we believe that it was fast. And the reason we believe it's fast, because now we have evidence of fast speciation rates occurring in everything that we look at. And we find massive amounts of fast mutation rates even accumulating. So a perfect example of that is when we did a pedigree rate study on chickens. Now, remember, pedigree rates are testing parent offspring. And here we have it, a mutation rate which was 15 times faster. Faster than what? Well, it was faster
than what they needed.
They needed, exactly. Faster than the phylogenetic assumption rate. Because if it was faster, then it shows that evolution is not true. They need something to be slow. It's not slow, it's fast. That's why they don't do pedigree rate, mutation rate studies very often, because every time they do one, it falsifies them. So they say, oh, it's too hard to do them. No, it's not. It's hard. So you're telling me it's hard to get a chicken and an offspring. You're out of your mind. Anyway, the study's really large. The reason it got large is because I wanted to cover a lot of different species. I think I make over 30 to 40 predictions in it and cover as many possible things. Let me go back to chat real quick because I noticed that there's a lot that I missed. My bad. Are you familiar with Dr. Robert Carter? Yes, Dr. Carter has been on. We've interviewed him, and he's on our channel here. You can go back and watch our interview with him. And if it's not on my channel, I definitely put it on. It's definitely on Standing for Truth. That's where we do most of the interviews. And then as we try to grow his channel, and then mine is a secondary channel to that one. Yes, he's definitely done good work. Robert Carter's awesome. As a matter of fact, if you haven't read his Patriarchal Drive study, I recommend that one as well, because he ran what would happen if somebody that was living to 500 years old had offspring, and what the mutation accumulation would do to those offspring. And lo and behold, it created a genetic drop in the ages of the decline of what we'd expect to see and what the scriptures talked about. So very, very intriguing. Yeah, true. Our goal is to prove our model. Oh, by the way, thank you. Good thing the lower rib grows back in humans. Yeah, true. It's the only bone in the human body that actually grows back. So isn't that very ironic and fascinating? I saw a good joke the other day that said, Adam, are you cheating on me? And he goes, Eve, how can I be cheating on you? I'm the only other human alive. So she runs up and starts feeling his ribs just to make sure.
This guy says, I fish in the Arctic waters. Aren't we related to scaly species? Laugh out loud. In scaly species, fallacy. It's all the theories they create in there is fiction content. God bless from. Oh yeah, no, I see what he's talking about. Yeah, but yeah, that is. It's things that it doesn't take much. It's not much of a step for things to, they see this evolution and these different species and they think, well, it's going to take so much time and these mutations and this huge amount of time. Well, you don't need that at all. It happens really quickly. it can happen very quickly. It's like, you can just cross a large dog with a small dog and cross certain breeds and make your own breeds and all sorts of things. It's depending on where you live and what you feed your dogs and all sorts of things can change all sorts of habits and how long they live or how short they live or whatever. Again, genetic switches are being switched on and off in our bodies all the time, and it tells things to change inside of us. And when things change inside of us, it's expressed in certain ways and can be expressed really quickly. So, speciation can happen very, very quickly. It's not anything to do with mutations. If you went by just mutations and beneficial mutations, how many we observe, well, you'd probably be looking at hundreds of billions of years or billions of years, tens of billions of years to speciate between all the speciation we see on Earth today at the current sort of what we currently can see and observe. Isn't that right, Matt? Something like that.
Yes, exactly. The speciation rate has falsified the theory continuously. And the reason why is because they actually did make predictions in the past. Even Darwin himself did on his own finches. Now, Darwin is notorious for studying finches. Matter of fact, they even named the finches after Darwin in the Galapagos Island. And so what happened is when they went there, they said, what's going on with these finches is when do they speciate? Maybe we can determine and we can actually make a prediction ourselves, because Darwin said that based on evolution, a finch species should arise once every 12,000 years. Those are his words. Now, what do we actually see when we look at those finches? Well, guess what? It doesn't look good for Darwin, like at all. Here's one. Boom. Rapid hybridization of these finches has taken place. They actually discovered that it doesn't take 12,000 years. It actually takes 3.5 years. That's right. You heard.
That's a big difference.
That 3.5 years. That's nothing. This is completely horrible for Darwin. Matter of fact, they said species are appearing in front of our eyes faster than Darwin could have ever predicted. This is horrible because evolution needs it to be slow, or otherwise, how in the world are there so many species? Or how in the world is there so few species after billions of years? And why? And it just doesn't make any sense. So if we're seeing rapid evolution, and we're seeing it in a lot of different life, for example, they just said rapid in animals. I'm going to show you, I'm looking for specifically Darwin because I have that exact number here. Guess I should have labeled it, huh, everybody? Kind of regretting that one now. It's okay though. It's okay. It's here. This is funny because all of these things were telling us that this should not be true, and yet it is. And you'll like this one. 5 white-tailed deer. That means 1 male and 4 female were introduced to an island in Finland in 1934, and today there's 100,000 deer. 100,000. That's 7 new species of deer in 80 years. That's it. You can hunt them all you want, by the way. That's how many there are. So, all bad. Rapid speciation. You can read study after study. We find it in plants. We find it in reptiles. We find it in mammals. We find it in fish, and we find it in deer. We find it everywhere we look. Everywhere they try to look.
Do you mean 7 species appeared in 80 years? 7 different deer species appeared in 80 years from just 5 original deers?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that what did 7 different deer species appear in just 80 years?
Right.
Is that right? 7 in 80 years.
Yes, 7 and 80 years and 100,000 of them total.
Oh wow, that's yeah, and that's like without human intervention. Apart from the fact that the only human intervention was we just left them there and that was it, and then we just got out of it. And in 80 years, it came 7 different species. Well, by itself, without people, selectively breeding them and stuff like that. Well, there you go.
Yes.
There you go. There's just, and then they'll say, "Oh, what about all the animals that have died and stuff? All the species have gone extinct." Well, that'll cover it. That'll cover it. You work that out of 4,500 years, and there's that's an enormous amount of species, enormous amount.
Oh yeah, I've run all those numbers as well, and I always tell people you can run anything that you want. If you wanted to run, let's say lizard. Okay, here's lizard for you. I make these charts all the time for people because I like them. People can use them this way. It doesn't just have to stay in a book at all. What in the world? Why is it not screen sharing?
Oh yeah.
Very peculiar. Oh, there it is. Okay, it was just laggy. We'll get to that comment in a minute. But you notice that there's only 4,675 species of lizards that are alive today. Well, if they're creating a new species every year on average, and you take that back about 5,000 years ago, we're seeing a number of exactly what we would expect to see. But if you were to say that the bottleneck happened 200,000 years ago, which is the average, give it, how many species would exist? Well, you'd have 200,000. Let's say that extinction killed half of them, which is unheard of. But let's just say half of them died. You're still left with 100,000 lizard species. We don't see that. Cut that number in half again. So 3/4 of all living lizards have died in 200,000 years. You're still at, what is that? 50,000? That's not good.
Is that the last bottleneck 200,000 years ago, is it?
Yes. And
great. So they can't run to a bottleneck rescue device on that one.
No, so I took their bottleneck excuse away from them because that's what they were going to say. So if I give them the benefit of the doubt and I go for the easiest numbers if possible and say, let's just assume that your worldwide bottleneck 200,000 years ago killed every living species of lizard except for one of them, and only 2 lizards lived, that means that there should be at minimum 100,000 lizard species on Earth if 50% of them died. You see how the numbers do not work at all for evolution, literally at all. So this guy said something funny. He goes, you ever notice that shows like Ancient Aliens exist because evolutionists convince everyone our ancestors were retarded? Well, Ancient Aliens is an interesting one. Here I am, a flying head on a show. But Ancient Aliens is actually, the reason most people believe in Ancient Aliens is because so much evidence exists that counters the evolutionary theory that they had to come up with another scenario. And it's more reasonable for people to believe that aliens did it than random evolutionary chance. It's kind of like, wait a minute, you expect us to believe that primitive man went into a global bottleneck and then modern day man popped out of it? What kind of sense does that make? And then all of a sudden, not only did we pop out of it, we didn't do anything for 195,000 years. And then all of a sudden, everywhere on the world, we exploded in knowledge, and we all decided to make our own writing system, make our own civilizations, make our own farming and agriculture, make our own mathematics, make our own calendar systems. And then on top of all of these different things that we all accumulate, we all managed to invent a global bottleneck catastrophe, even though we've never met one another in the world. And we all decided to build pyramids everywhere on the world. Are you kidding me right now? So I think people know how stupid that is for evolution theory. And so they said, you know what? It's probably, if you've never heard of the Bible and you've never heard of young Earth creation, then the next logical scenario is probably aliens. And I don't blame them, honestly, because literally you're stuck with the stupidity of evolution, or you actually have to come up with something better. And aliens is better. Shocking, I know.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got? Here we go. I saw a documentary on this same topic, genetic boundaries. In the 50s, a scientist found the mechanism for genetic boundaries. Ooh, I'd love that. He won a Nobel Prize. Then they took it away from him. Silence afterwards. I've never been able to find that documentary again and forgot his name. Ooh, that would be, ooh, that's a good one. That's got to be found. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So, man, we've been going over 2 hours. So here, let's do a couple of laughs. What do you think? Let's laugh at some things here. I found this comment really funny because they're being condescending for somebody discovering a dinosaur drawing. And while they're being condescending, they're making fun of themselves. Look at this. It is not a dinosaur. It is impossible because we know dinosaurs went extinct 12 million years ago. 12 million years before man appeared on Earth. So 12 million years before man. Wait a minute. That's not 65 million years ago. That's not even close. This is what they believed when they wrote this book. So by them saying that's not a dinosaur, even though it completely looks like one, and there's nothing else alive that could possibly look like. I mean, not that I'm aware of. So they're trying to mock, saying that's not a dinosaur. Humans never saw dinosaurs because they went extinct 12 million years before humans ever were on the scene. 12 million years is just ridiculous to begin with. These numbers change all the time, and they're laughable at this point. Oh, look, here's Dr. Jensen's chart on how he shows genetic boundaries as well. Oh, I didn't edit this one, so my bad, everybody. Never mind. This is a picture before I edited it. Sorry. So I guess that'll do it. We're going to go live later, and I'm going to do one on a local flood, but not because of the debate that just happened, but because I'm writing a book on it. Local flood versus global flood. So Jason, I will leave it to you, and you can talk to people about whatever you want, and we'll close it down.
All right. Well, I just wanted to bring up my usual thing. I just want to see this Big Bang theory, right? This beginning of the universe. Okay, now Einstein believed in the steady state universe. You know, that's basically the universe was always there. Before he spent a night with Edward Hubble in an observatory. And after he spent that night with Edward Hubble, he came out saying, well, you know, I understand why, you know, he has to have a beginning now, because what they observed was everything was moving away from them, and whichever way they looked. And they could see, you know, there's this redshift of light which shows that things are moving away. And Edward Hubble proved that to Einstein, and then Einstein, you know, realized that he was wrong about his steady state theory, that because everything was moving away from each other, that it had to be closer together at one point, and therefore there had to be a beginning. Like, you know, like, why is it moving away? It means it was closer together, or maybe explosion and bang, and it's all moving apart now, and everywhere we look. So if it was a steady state universe, it wouldn't be moving apart like that, because it couldn't possibly moving apart like that forever and ever and ever, because it would get so infinitely, distances between even particles of dust would get so infinitely huge that, you know, you wouldn't be able to even see these stars, because they'd be so spread out and so hard and probably all burn out gold and dead by then. But it's so, you know, you've got, so basically what they established is that there had to be a beginning, because even, I mean, like, it's pretty laughable. Matter's made up of atoms, and atoms are energy, right? So it's like saying that matter and energy never had a beginning, that it's from everlasting to everlasting, because it's a steady state universe, and matter's always been and always will be. So, you know, it's from everlasting to everlasting, right? That's matter from everlasting to everlasting. And which is basically what that's saying, which is what it says in the Bible, that God's from everlasting to everlasting. So what I want to know is what do they believe? What do evolutionists believe? And they have to believe in the beginning. They can't just say that, you know, it's not true, because, you know, I just gave you the evidence of why it had to have a beginning, because everything's moving apart. And it says in the Bible, 17 times in the Bible, it says that God stretches out the heavens. Right, he's stretching everything apart. So it says in the Bible 17 times. What we observe is exactly what it says in the Bible. And you guys, okay. So if you get rid of the steady state theory, which is pretty easy to get rid of because, you know, you'd have to believe in something like God. Your matter is like God from everlasting to everlasting. So you just get rid of that. So you've got your Big Bang and you go into this thing. So you've got to believe in the Big Bang theory. You have to believe that nothing created everything from nothing. You can't have anything at all before because, you know, you just can't. It has to be, you know, it's all moving apart from each other. So nothing created everything out of nothing, and then that's where you end up having to be. So what I want to let them know is, the evolutionists, is that they've got faith. They've got a deep faith, right? Because then the Big Bang, and you know, you just basically you appeared, and you really do believe this, and they say, oh, but that's not a part of evolution. That's got nothing to do with evolution. But they do believe they come from a big swirling cloud of dust, and people like Neil Tyson deGrasse say they're weird, but you know, with a starry look in his eye, you know, like he looks like he's got having a religious experience. You say, but we're stardust. We're all just stardust, you know, like. So, you know, they do believe this stuff, and the simple fact is, and then I know they do, and they don't like to admit it, but they have to believe, and they have to admit that they have faith as well. So when they come along and say, oh, you just believe in a sky daddy and a bunch of goat herders that chuck the book together, well, you know, you believe in something just as, you know, as it takes just as much faith to believe. Okay, it really probably more faith. I mean, you know, at least we've got God. It says that God created everything ex nihilo out of nothing. You got nothing creating everything, you know, ex nihilo, you know, ex nihilo out of nothing. I mean, you know, it's how does if there was ever truly nothing, how could nothing create anything? It's no time, no space, no matter, not even an atom, not even a subatomic particle, absolutely nothing. And but if you do have something, then what created it or what put it there? And that's why if you have anything eternal at all, and that's why Richard Dawkins and Stephen Hawking's and all that, and Lawrence Krauss hate the idea of eternal matter. And that's why they always try to, you know, say, well, all the matter is positive and all the matter is negative, and if you put these two things together, then it equates to nothing. You know, that cancels each other out, because 50-50 of negative and 50 of positive, and you put it together, it means it equals to nothing. And then that's when people get the wrong idea, and they say, oh, but that's what he really means. He doesn't mean that there's actually nothing or there was nothing. And he does. That's exactly what he does mean, because I've got videos of him talking, and I'll be doing comment debates, section debates with people, and I'll put up the video of Richard Dawkins. I can't believe it. I mean, you know, Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins and stuff like that, and just the link itself, and without any writing at all, so they can't say there was anything rude or whatever, and they take it down. And I'm like, and this is on channels where I'm, you know, I've got admin privileges, sort of stuff. And so how, anyway, but yeah, so you've got to believe. So what I'm getting at is that you've got a faith as well, and you people you got to remember, you come in here and you laugh and you carry on and whatever. Well, you got just as big a faith, and you have to have just as much faith that chemicals in a chemical soup somewhere, you know, somehow came together and created complex life. I mean, you've got also have a lot of faith in, you know, you had single-celled organisms for billions of years, and then boom, you got the Cambrian explosion. You know, you got, you know, things with all the animal phyla of today, you know, with compound eyes and complex compound eyes and stomachs and legs and arms and brains and everything just exploding onto the scene. Boom, you know, with no transitionals at all. I mean, they got these really weak stuff, the show transitionals, you got this stuff everywhere, just things exploding onto the scene everywhere, just instantly, just being fully formed, and they can't, you know, it's just even the formation of planets can't happen. It's so you've got faith, just the formation of planets, dust sticking together and clumps of dust and turning into rocks, and then rocks sticking together and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, It's faith. When rocks smash into each other, they're doing 30 kilometers a second and 100 kilometers a second. They don't stick together. They just smash back into dust again. You know what I mean? And this is what would be happening out there. There wouldn't be rocks just gently floating around and gently coming together. You know, these things are traveling at, 30 kilometers, 100 kilometers per second. Boom, dust. And it starts all over again. They got faith in a lot of places, just the formation of the planets. And even if the planets could form in this early soup of dust and the early sun while the early sun was forming and stuff, well, the planet's orbit would degrade. Everything would degrade down into the sun and collapse into the sun, because all the dust would cause the orbits of anything going around to degrade down into the sun. So everything would, all the planets and everything would degrade down in the sun. So they've got to have so much faith on so many levels, all the way up until when you get to, the first life appearing. And then after that, you've got to get cells, evolving and growing more complex over time via mutations that destroy and blah, 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 blah. And then all the way out. And there's just so much evidence together. We're breaking down. We're not going up, we're breaking down, and we are. But I mean, everything I said before that, you just got to have so much incredible, huge amount of faith. So they're just as big a religion, evolutionists, and they don't realize it. So yes, you're a religionist, you're religion, you've got a religion, and you're fanatics, and actually you're zealots. And a lot of you, the guys that come on these channels and that, you're zealots. And you got your like YouTube taking down Richard Dawkins videos. I mean, what? When will they ever take down a Richard Dawkins video? Because someone would say, oh, they don't really mean that about there's actually nothing. And I'll just post a video link without any writing. Just say, well, okay, well, watch this. And this will show you this is Richard Dawkins explaining it, or Lawrence Krauss explaining it, or Stephen Hawking explaining it. Take it from them. Don't take my word for it. See what they tell you. And I don't just give them like videos that have got 30-second clips. I give them long videos that have got big, long hour and a half hour, 45-minute explanations, not just, like a quick, couple of quotes quoting somebody. This got these people, Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins and Stephen Hawking, sitting there talking for a long periods of time and explaining in great detail what they believe. And I put that up, and then YouTube takes that down. Why? I mean, that just shows me that they're outright trying to help. I mean, why would a Richard Dawkins video be flagged by anyone ever? I mean, tell me, are they against evolution? Are YouTube against evolution? They don't like evolution then, I suppose. They're taking down Richard Dawkins videos and Lawrence Krauss videos and Stephen Hawking videos. They must be against. There must be a big change. What do you reckon, Matt? Huge big change in evolution for them to take down those videos. I mean, no, that's just outright taking them down so they can defend somebody, help one of their little atheist buddies, evolutionist buddies in there win an argument against me. Because, those videos that I posted showed damn well exactly what I was freaking well saying, that guy, you know what I mean, that they do believe that nothing created everything from nothing, and they bloody well do. And I've got them saying it. And then some, YouTube, employees, they're probably watching the conversation. Oh, we'll get rid of that video. Oh, we'll get rid of that. Oh, that'll prove him right. We don't want that. We couldn't have that. No, creation is telling it like it really is. It drives me bloody insane. But, yeah, so, there you go. So you've got nothing creating everything from nothing. So you're a bunch of freaking religious freaks and fanatics just like we are. Okay? So there you go. Just like you say we are, not like we are. I shouldn't say like we are. Look, they're going to edit that out now. They get that. It make me look bad. But for sure, that's going to turn up somewhere soon. But, yeah, so... so you just remember that you're fanatics, zealots, and you're fanatical about you, and you're full of zeal for your religion. Of evolution, and you are, because you try to spread it. You try to spread the gospel of nothing creating everything from nothing everywhere you go, and you always feel the need to come on this dumb creationist channels and spread the gospel of hopelessness and and nothing, and just, you know, that everything's going to burn out. It doesn't matter how much evil you do or how much good you do. It doesn't matter, because one day everything, the whole universe will burn out, become cold, dead, and dark, and all the good deeds and bad deeds, nothing will mean anything in the long run anyway, and everything's going to be dead. You know, the religion of hopelessness, and you know, what's the point of life? And, you know, like, just, yeah, wonderful, wonderful religion you got there, fellas. I can understand why you'd want to push that hopelessness on people, you know, so they can feel hopeless about, you know, like, what's the point of doing anything? You know, I go and help people. It's just a waste of time because everything's going to be dead anyway. You know, yeah, it's the best, you know, best religion on the planet. I don't understand why people are so intent on pushing, you know, oh, look, we're trying to convert creationists. Look, a creationist has got hope for after they die, they're going to go away and, you know, be saved and live in the paradise and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, even if there was nothing after, it'd still be nice to believe that up until when you die and never, you know, and then die. And then if there's nothing more, what's it matter anyway? I mean, it doesn't matter. So it's like, you know, think about it. But if you don't do the right thing, and they're always trying to say, okay, well, we don't want you to, you know, to live a life like that. We want you to enjoy yourself and come over to our side, and we're going to convert you and all this sort of stuff. And it's just, why the person's happy the way they are. Why are you got to come over here? And because that's because you're evangelical preachers for the religion of evolutionism, and you are absolutely outright. And all sort of this, plenty of atheists see this. You are outright evangelical preachers for the religion of evolutionism, and I've established that you do have a religion because you have lots of things that can never be scientifically proven. That as a matter of fact, are scientifically proven to be otherwise in a lot of cases, and yet you still have faith that it happened somehow. Okay, right, we've got it. Okay, religion, faith-based religion. So yes, it's evolution is a faith-based religion. So I just wanted to rub that in as much as I possibly could. Yeah.
Good one. No, for sure. It is a good reminder, because they're so quick to point out, like you said, that, oh, you guys, all you have is faith. You don't have evidence for anything. It's like, oh, really? Explain to us then how nothing exploded and then life came from non-life, and they don't have evidence. So they just admit that they're faith-based. But the second you do, they don't want to admit that because they know it's true. So they just go off on a tangent and start hand-raving and screaming at you. You're not a real Christian because you're mean to me. Yeah, I ask a question and now I'm mean. Okay, victim card.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. To get out of like answering stuff. It's like when I debate with people, often I'll debate on an evolutionist timeline, and I'll ask them, and I'll get into debate with them about like okay, so what do you believe? And I'll say, you know, I give them the questions. You know, nothing created everything from nothing, steady state universe, or God created it. Which one? And you know that. They always try to dance around it and get around the truth of because they can see where I'm going with it. They don't want to walk right into it. Some of them do, but I'll get into these big long arguments with them about it, and it'll get so heated at some point, like, you know, they'll realize that I'm making them look stupid, so they just delete the entire thread. And I've had that happen about, I don't know, like so many times now I've lost count. So and sometimes I like to take my time and then go back a long time later, you know, and go back to these things. So these arguments and stuff, these debates, they've always got these evolutionists at these long ages. They've got nothing to prove it. They've got everything's against them. There's so much stuff I'd love to talk about that I can't talk about because, you know, whatever. There's some stuff that we've got, projects we've got going. But yeah, there's not really that much for them to base their theory on. Even the things that they think are some of the foundations of an old Earth and evolution are just not as rock solid a foundation as they think it is, and that's all I'll say on that subject.
No, that was good, man. That was good. We just wanted to end it up a little bit and close it up. I just yeah, I just wanted you to have some last words in there after your theory. And
he's just playing. Your kid's just playing in the background. I can hear him playing out there. He's just happy. He says like he couldn't care less. So
Yeah, it's
And I'm
going
like, nah,
crazy.
nah, nah, nah. Yeah, no, he's just having fun. That's all. I was a nightmare. He just asked my mother. Would have been climbing across the roof and stomping up on the roof and going, nah, and stomping around. It was a real pain in the neck. Anyway, all right.
All right, everybody. Well, we'll be back later, and we are going to be doing a global versus local flood whole series. And
Yeah,
yeah,
he's seeing red because of all the crap. He's seeing blood red because he's seen all the crap from the lies from the evolutionists. No, I'm just joking.
yeah. That debate was actually good because it'll help me finish up my book now that I know what they think even a little bit more. Oh man, it's crazy. So it'll be good.
Yeah.
But until next time, everybody.
See
Have
ya.
a good night, and till next time.
See ya.